beautiful light. Shine your light down on me.
So right, so right, we're still free.
Wants to be a part of that.
Love that, Father.
Yeah.
Hey, brother. Thank you for your connection. Thank you for our brotherhood.
Mm-hmm. Connection to this land that you call home here, Scotts Falls.
Oh,
With this elder here. All these elders. Yeah, it's good to be with the breathing ones for this transmission.
mm-hmm. So feeling importance of this transmission coming through today, I think we could start with what you feel the nature of the prayer and purpose of combining our minds and our hearts.
Yeah.
And offering people what we're bringing to circle.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the primary gifts coming from a clinical mental health psychology background into the breathwave, conscious breathing space was realizing how much that the healing arts space was missing the element of ceremony and the element of ritual. And the Western psychological project has evolved to a point of realizing that the mind is more than just the brain, that it includes the body and it includes our relationality with each other. And so the field of somatic experiencing and a lot of the trauma-informed works are guiding us back into a sensational connection with our own bodies to heal the root of trauma at the core, which is a disconnection from our bodies, but also from ourselves. And so coming into Breathwave and having a somatic practice like conscious connected breathing held in a ceremonial way lit up both of the spaces in my practice that were missing, and began this love affair with breath and with communal ceremony as a way of healing and returning to ourselves.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I look back to when I really started to feel my heart open and find my home in medicine work, it was through the elders that had their open arms that welcomed me in. You know, growing up as a white man, I mean, I was born with my father as a police officer when I was born, so eventually, quite quickly, I guess, it developed a really strong authority complex of the style of education, of needing to prove myself and developing a really strong will to protect myself from that quality of a military, angry teacher. And also as a white man in British Columbia, Canada, I never really felt a warm welcoming because the wounds were so fresh, and the Indigenous people, that most circles were not welcoming the white people into those circles because we were the ones that had been threatening to take those rituals away for so many years. And so my heart really started to open when I was welcomed into the ceremonial space, and that quality of creator's authority really brought about this home in me to, like, this is something I can listen to and follow. I want to learn these ways. And I also needed to be shown where my own belief constructs were getting in the way. And so the really good elders that held me had this way of me falling in love with them, but there was a time where they were like, this is what I'm seeing in you that's not getting it, or this is how I see you're getting in the way. I see you're still trying to prove yourself, and we're all the same here.
Yeah.
And so the gift for me of ceremony is really about becoming the nature of things, bringing us back into harmony with nature, which is ourselves. And that's eventually when the breath really cracked me open, I knew very clearly that this was the medicine that I wanted to share in this life, and it's so clean and pure, right? We don't have to smuggle it across borders, and anyone can improve their life by improving their breath, because how we breathe is how we live.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things I see in the field of psychology and also just the ceremonial healing path these days is within the psychedelic renaissance, the permission to commune with these substances, but more deeply to commune with our deeper nature. And so
Right.
there's this fascination and also this a mixed bag of coming into ceremonial spaces with people that are learning to reconnect to the power of ritual, the power of plant medicine, and connecting to things deeper than maybe what they grew up with. And I think you speak to a really universal quality of feeling welcomed, by the
Mm-hmm.
elders. And developmentally speaking, that's a core need of every child, every infant that comes into this world, is to feel that they're safe and that they're welcome and that there's a true connection that's
Mm-hmm.
there. And in your story, that connection was with an authoritative father who was, conditioned by the police training to see authority and see power and see rightness, in terms of following the law or following his voice of what he thought you should do. And that didn't agree with you. So from like a very early age, that warm welcome had a lot of conditions that didn't agree with your being. And I think that that's one of the things that's hard to put a finger on from our stories, especially if some of us come from like really loving backgrounds. It can be hard to find the ways that we've disconnected from our experience of harmony, our
Mm-hmm.
experience of wholeness, and to find a way to really slice into the reality of ways that we're entranced or dissociated from that felt connection with
Mm-hmm.
ourself is kind of what I see as the gold star practice within conscious connected breathing. Is we're not the ones telling people what that feels like. We're inviting them into a supported experience of their own felt connection to something deeper than their their adaptive strategies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've been really privileged to have a lot of medicine experiences with different medicine families and cultures and traditions, and I see how there's such a draw to plant medicines because of the annihilation of the ego into God consciousness. And oftentimes I see that it's easier to escape our reality than to dive deeper into it. Although some of those medicines really take us much deeper, and they help us with the shadow work. My passion is the integration of what those teachers, those power plants, are teaching us to implement in our lives, because I've seen that there can be a spiritual addiction that's cultivated to look for the next heightened peak experience for some clarity, but you're not making those corrections. And this is where this self-healing integrative practice is so empowering to prepare for a ceremony like that, and to come out of a ceremony like a really deep plant medicine ceremony, and to integrate it more with the coherence between the messages that we're getting and the feeling. And that's the gift of breath, is that it's really about sensation. It's really about the light of our consciousness being more aware of sensations and how we're moving the energy in an optimal way. And that's what I find really fascinating, that's also unique to Breathwave, is that we help people correct their breathing patterns, which is where the trance comes in. And I find that people come from other modalities that haven't been shown how to correct some of those contractions in the body. And they might never be shown unless it's brought to their awareness that they're tightening still as they're releasing, and there's not a full release. There's not going to be a full discharge and letting go of the story when we come up against it. Or are we fighting and working too hard and never able to throw in the towel, right? So this breath practice is not just passive, it's active. And the balance of that masculine and female force brings us back into union and harmony with the forces of nature within ourselves, where at some point we're going to come up against those mental constructs and how they're showing up, which are mostly unconscious, because the breath is a bridge between the subconscious and the conscious. And this is this fascinating journey that we have with each and every breather, and how it's so unique to basically just be a reflection of, like a midwife knows how to trust in the beauty and magic that's already moving that we are. But when we notice that something's getting in the way, we're honest about that and offer some reflection. Can you see that you're tightening in your jaw? Can you see that you're controlling the throat? Can you see that you're tightening the belly as you let go? And you're not maybe fully letting go. It feels good to let go. So bringing in affirmative prayer with that correction can make really profound corrections in how we're living our life and how we're relating to other self and others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot in there to unpack around, well, one, the uniqueness that I've seen within the breathwave practice, as there's a ceremonial emphasis and a recognition that we've lost ritual, that we've lost as a community a way of connecting intimately with each other through sacred practices, sharing intentions, and just those simple pieces being in place. What then changes when you have a powerful somatic practice or ritual like conscious connected breathing? So there's that element that I think is unique within breathwave, amongst other powerful ways of breathing, like holotropic breathwork, or pick your, the brand of breathwork that has its gifts and its truths that it teaches. One of the things that I've seen within the prayerful focus on somebody's heartfelt intention coming into a breath experience is this relationship between what they're hoping for, what they're praying for, what they're intending for their life, and those unconscious breathing patterns that are keeping them entranced in their survival mechanisms or their mental perceptions of what's possible. Because, like you're saying, those patterns are largely unconscious and formed in deeper hypnotic states in our childhood. We're unaware of how we're missing the connected rhythm of an optimal breathing pattern.
Right.
And so that simple service of welcoming someone, like you're saying, your elders welcoming you in unconditionally to the ceremonial space, once that care and connection is established, there's the rapport, there's the respect to then receive correction and let someone outside of your own predicament point out where you're getting in your own way. And so that's what I hear as the gift of coming from your father, and that authoritative difficulty into a recognition of true authority and true power. And you've brought that in such a unique way to noticing how we breathe is how we live. And if we correct how we breathe, how we live can start to improve.
Yeah, I notice how we're very attached to what we know to be true. We live in a top-down society where the science and the mechanistic model of the body, it's like if something's going wrong, we go outside of ourselves to look for the fix. And we're also attached to believing that our thoughts are true, right? And so to have this open awareness of forgetting everything we know while being informed by something that's greater than us, that's working through us, that is us, right? It cultivates a deep empowerment of coming home to ourselves, and also letting go and purging some of these old constructs and stories of the mind.
So how does forgetting everything we know relate to the optimal sort of breath rhythm that you're coaching within Breathwave?
Thank you. So when you invite the fullness of the inhale, that might be a worthiness, which is one of the main core wounds in the West, unworthiness. When you actually more deeply receive, you give yourself permission to open and bring in the gifts in life, right? And if we believe that we need to be in control of that, there might be a control pattern in there in the turn and loop of the release of the exhale. right? And there might be a hard-working nature of the back muscles needing to be working at the breath, because I grew up knowing or being taught that money doesn't grow on trees and I need to work hard to get results. And so these are some of the patterns that emerge, and how people breathe is how they live. But if we soften that and let the breath do the work a little bit more, while giving ourselves permission to still bring in the power of life, then we start to unravel those ideas. Yeah. And so we're coming up against the unconscious belief constructs. That's where the trance and the ego project is uprooted.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we start to unlearn. Right.
I love the word trance as it relates to the way our breath rhythm is keeping us connected to potentially outdated ways of seeing reality. Like when we experience a trauma, the mind disconnects from the present moment in such a simple, innocent way, because it's too painful, it's too unbearable to really stay, to experience. So some part of our spirit, some part of our awareness leaves the present moment just to get through. And especially when there's habitual experiences of that, our will just starts to deteriorate, and we split from what it actually feels like to be connected to our body, connected to authentic sensation that would guide a sincere yes or a sincere no in our life. So it's so simple, but if we lack that attuned quality, like an instrument that's in tune, we just get used to playing out of tune.
Right.
And we call that ourself, and we call that reality. And so to be called back into attunement, to be called back into a more open, natural breath rhythm, like you're speaking about, that can bring up all sorts of feelings. It can feel threatening. It can feel insulting to our ego. It can feel dangerous, because if we're doing a good job going to surrender of the ego and surrender of those defenses, we're going to have to feel the unbearable nature of what it was like to split from ourselves in the beginning.
Precisely.
And so that's where I think the midwifery example is so strong, because there's a liberation and a freedom of breath that wants to be birthed in the conscious connected breathing experience, that for our ego, for our sense of ourself, there's a death. There's, I don't know if I'm going to make this. Something's going to be born out of me. And I don't know how to fully surrender to that. Can I trust this
Right.
emergence?
There's an existential fear in most people of what is going to be unleashed once we tap into it, because of the heaviness of how much we've carried for generations. We all know that there's some pain inside, and we've been given a lot of tools on how to avoid that, how to disassociate, how to numb that. So when we start to get into our feeling nature, and we start to feel the power that begins to be transpersonal, and we start to come up against the resistance that's keeping us safe from feeling that very thing, that's where the breakthroughs come in. And the God Self comes alive, right? And there's an emergence. Right? And we realize that it doesn't all move all at once. We can start to peel some of those layers to cover up or uncover what's always been there, right? And that's been my experience, knowing that everyone is the medicine and has everything that they've needed since the start to heal ourselves.
Yeah.
And there's been very clearly some things in the way. We can call trauma unexpressed emotion. Right? And emotion is just energy that wants to move. And so we also welcome people into this authentic expression of the wild animal that just wants to be free. And freedom is my why. I love to see people come into their power. When it comes without authenticity, there's a persona or identification with a way of being that can get in the way, and then there's a swirling around the gift of sensation and softness. And so there's these qualities of nature that like to occur as a fundamental protocol, and how the release of the breath brings the receptivity of the breath, and the fullness of the receptivity brings another release. It's a circle, and that's the hoop of life. That's the full spectrum of medicine that opens all of the energy centers in the body, including the higher brain centers. But it's not just science, it's a practice, right?
A sensational attunement to what energy feels like when it's flowing optimally in the body. Back to the trance, and as it relates to psychedelics and as it relates to transpersonal psychology, we have Stanislav Grof's work within holotropic breathwork that realized we can get to these powerful transpersonal states without substances. And the transpersonal psychology movement is breaking the trance of the personal story. We realize that our personal story might be part of the reason that we're suffering, that we're hyper-identified, I like to say, pathologically identified with, because the psyche becomes over-identified with the path that it has decided to take. And eventually that path becomes a dead end, or it needs to expand, and that contracted state of the mind, like you're saying, it keeps us entranced. And I think it's easy to overlook or easy to underestimate from a state of feeling separate from harmony, from wholeness, from spirit. When we don't have that sensational sense, most of us in our lives have that sense of separation from the God consciousness.
Right.
And we're trying to figure that out based on the education and experience that we've gathered. And so there's already a filter that's playing on, is this possible? Is this for me? We haven't been socialized. We don't, have a way of speaking really about oneness at a deep core spiritual level with all things, generally speaking, in our Western culture. We speak of nature as though it's something that's beyond human, rather than seeing it as a fundamental part of ourself, understanding Earth as an extension of ourself. So just in our language, we're entrancing ourselves into separation. And what I hear you speaking to, and the quality of what we're unlearning in our breath pattern, is we're coming back into that original state of
Remembering.
remembrance.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and to trace it even further back, let's look at the root wound in the indigenous hearts of the people that have had their rituals taken away, right? So to find something as simple as a ritual of breath to come back into the first and the last ceremony that we ever take, that's intrinsic. It's medicine, right? It's simply profound. And Babaji, who we got this medicine from, he said it's the simple things that are actually the most profound, right? And the most powerful. So I love to keep it simple and just tune into what someone's prayer is, what are the qualities that they're bringing, or what are the challenges that are causing some difficulty or suffering in their life, and start there. What is that teaching you, and where is that taking you? And then out of that, there's a prayer, and that gives them some orientation. It gives us some direction and purpose on what we want to breathe for. Because it's not about what we're dying for, it's about what we're living for at this time in history.
Yeah.
Right?
The gift of those questions, which when you speak, it sounds so natural to ask someone, okay, I hear, what life has done to you, or how you've dealt with life and its challenges. What has that taught you, and where is that taking you? Those two questions, like to ask those questions after you've really connected with the heart and the suffering and the confusion of somebody, and still take them into that forward-leaning evolution of themselves through a ritual practice that can deliver a deeper sense of wholeness, is such a complete medicine.
Yeah.
It's such a complete offering. It goes to the root, the emotional root, the psychological root, where those behavioral symptoms or those relational tensions in someone's life that are causing physiological, disruptions in digestion and physical posture and all of this, it goes right to that space where the symptoms began. We're resourcing a sense of permission to learn You know, we there's an innocent quality to that of like, whoa, thank you for sharing with me, and what are you learning from that?
Mm-hmm.
Paired with a practice that can take us out of that trance and that cycle of,
Right.
this is the only way I've ever known it to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what we come up against mostly is our resistance, which is what we need to unlearn. And that's where the quality of surrender brings trust in something that's new that wants to come alive. There needs to be a space that's cleared in order for something new to be born, right? And so this is the cycle of life and death, you know, within our own being that takes place in every single breath. And that's mainly what becomes a challenge and an opportunity within the breath and the patterns of the breath. Of the very resistance is the thing that's showing us what needs to be let go of, but on the other side of that wall there's a brand new gift.
I'm thinking of those who haven't experienced conscious connected breathing, and when you speak of what we come up against in the spiritual path, or what we come up against in this practice as our own resistance, what do you mean? What are the basic ways that someone just coming to the practice is going to notice that they are bound up?
Patterns of resistance show up in many different ways. For some people it's just disassociation. They've got a very, very short attention span because they're so distracted. But resistance can also come up in the way of sensation, where an old pattern of blocked energy starts to vibrate at a higher frequency, and all of a sudden it shows up as pain or discomfort. And we start to notice, if we offer some reflection from someone who's trained in this work, that there's a contraction in the body that's actually perpetuating that discomfort. And so that resistance becomes a gift that's showing us where we need to soften a little bit more and breathe through. So there's not just softening, there's a receptivity into that area, because the natural survival mechanism is to steer away from pain. We want to steer towards what feels good. And so we're living in a luxury creature comfort conditioned culture. We're creatures of habit, and we like to lean towards what feels good and what's convenient. But now people are realizing that something in me wants to wake up, and something in me wants to die.
Yeah.
And something in me is causing suffering, right? It has to do with my patterns of choice that come through this filter. Big mind, little mind, matter is quantum physics in 3 seconds, right? And so this is what we're filtering through, where we find those patterns of resistance, and this becomes our learning path, where it gives us some way to move forward. I like to say we can't run on the ice, right? We need some resistance to crawl our way to finding our feet.
Yeah. When you talk about that we're a culture of comfort and a culture of convenience, I think that is maybe one of the deepest challenges that we face, is that in the Western culture, or enlightenment, rational, scientific, technological, industrialized version of humanity that we are right now, it's hard to know how steeped we are in this version of ourselves, collectively speaking. You know, and I think of to get to a point in one's life where, despite your comfort, despite your bank account being as padded as you've been able to, you know, make it, something stirs in you that your spirit is not well. The spirit is depressed. Even if materially speaking you have everything that you need, there's more to the human experience, and there's something more essential to the spirit than just comfort and convenience. And so to go seek out experiences like a psychedelic journey that might require a purge and a releasing of your patterns of resistance, this seems to be one of the things that we're seeing and learning. There's a renaissance towards these sorts of experiences because of what you're speaking to. You know, we're suffering inside of our patterns of resistance, even if they're working for us. And so to have a practice like conscious breathing that makes that very tangible and very explicit supposes that there is a relationship between our, our emotional and relational sufferings and the way that we're breathing. I think it sounds so mystical that there could be a relationship between the two, but you're saying it's quite simple and quite obvious how it shows up in the tissue and the way it contracts when you're coaching this style of breath.
Yeah, for a lot of people, that because we are addicted to peak experience, so just leaning people into, hey, we can get high off our own supply. Sometimes that's the open door, and then we come in, and as we get high, we're realizing that it's also about finding good quality rest. And this is where the science of nervous system regulation comes in, to where for something to be triggered in consciousness and in the brain, there needs to be a rest cycle for it to complete its cycle and there to be proper integration. And this is one of the qualities that we bring in of softness that's really landing for people, to where we don't have to work hard to get somewhere. We're already here, right? And as we presence with this here and now more, something beautiful comes alive that's already happening, that's already the case. And then we start to notice where we're not listening, where we're not connected with sensation, where we start to avoid, where we start to contract. And this is where the gift of resistance plays in to the ritual of breath, right? And coming back to ceremony, one of the things that felt really like home for me was the ability to speak to the unseen forces. And breath is one of these things that's like right under our nose, so it's easily overlooked.
Right. The most basic unseen force of our life.
Right. And at the same time, we all have spirit guides. We all have ancestors that are still working with us. And so to actually speak invocation and to welcome these forces, to welcome the tree elders, right, to welcome the spirit of the land wherever we are, to open in this way where there's some acknowledgement, there's some gratitude, there's an appreciation and a calling in of those forces. In all cultures, there's a directional ceremonial coming back to wholeness that right away feels really good when those unseen forces are spoken to. And it can be done very simply, and then we come into the medicine, right? And when the medicine is the breath, it's like, oh, this has always been here for me.
Right.
And I can learn this even more. I can play with this. This is my power. Right? It's so empowering. And the beauty of it being a self-healing practice is that I know that I can't breathe for you. And I also know, therefore, that I'm not the one doing the healing for you. I'm handing you back the ball so you can take full responsibility for your life again. And so there's a passion and direction and mission that starts to come in. If someone's true gifts start to come alive, they start to polish those things that they've always been wanting to share, but they didn't have the confidence to share their voice. And when we find the resonance of being able to express our voice, whether we have a pretty singing voice or not, one of these medicines that we bring in with the breath is toning and expression, and finding that sometimes primal expression that wants to come through, so the stagnation or the agitation that's on the surface gets to be expressed, and then we can feel that peace and harmony again. And for me, that's the essence of any ceremony, is it brings us back to harmony. Through the journey, there's oftentimes, right, what we might call demons, but the demons, we create those demons, right? That's why we say slay your demons, because they're self-created, right? And therefore, remembering that we are the God force and we have these two choices at any time. I could pick up alcohol again tomorrow morning and, start smoking tobacco if I wanted, but am I going to be as present with my children? Or am I going to be pissed off at myself for making those choices? So we make choices every day, and I find that the breath helps us make all these other positive choices, because there's a self-loving practice where Now my cup is full. I'm taking care of myself. I feel good about myself. And I can take care of you too. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple points in there that jump out to me. And like the first point that you made of like feeling welcomed home, you know, in the way that coming into a new relationship with our breath and our body is like the deepest homecoming we could have. You know, to really feel a fundamental shift in the way that we breathe, clearing resistance, emotional distress, or avoidance in ways that we're used to escaping, and to feel like, no, I'm actually capable of feeling this, and I trust myself, I trust life, and then, like you're saying, because there's this knowing of nervous system regulation being a fundamental component of how we repattern our relationship with life, that emphasis on rest and that emphasis on peace, relaxation, allows our body to do what it already knows how to do.
Precisely.
And it takes that warm welcome from the elders or from the community or the ceremonial container into our body, into a felt perception. And I sense that until we really receive that gift, it's hard to not be pissed at other people or pissed at ourselves when we're busy trying to make ends meet and we're busy trying to uphold, you know, our side of the equation, and upset that our partner isn't meeting our needs in some way if we don't feel our needs met in some fundamental way without having to work so hard for it. Of course we're going to be pissed off at other people slouching, you know, or not working as hard as we are. And you can just see how the conflict is just endless. We're going to keep this, you know, like ritualizing our disassociation from that peace.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But when we do find that harmony within ourselves, we're not controlling
Right.
outside of ourselves as much anymore. And there's a tendency that we see in breath patterns where those that like to control everything in their environment, they're also controlling their breathing. Right? So it's very self-revealing to actually notice that I can make some fundamental corrections in how I'm breathing, and it's going to allow me to allow everything to be the way it is. Right? And I'm much more aware. And that spatial awareness takes time for anyone, because we're so locked in our predicament of what we're not getting, our needs are unmet, and I suck or this sucks. And when we start to come alive and we get more aware of the sensational experience, there's also a spatial awareness that comes alive. Like if you've ever had a plant medicine journey and the morning comes alive and it's like, wow, I've never seen the sky like this, or I've never seen the trees like that. I've got a teacher that teaches aquacranial sacral, and she says when the whales show up, the businessmen that have been looking at their phones all of a sudden are like, oh, the water is so pretty, nice colored shirt, and there's just a connection and presence all of a sudden that the whales actually reverberate, and it raises a frequency of more intelligence. And we can do this within ourselves by turning on higher brain centers. The prefrontal cortex comes alive, the neocortex comes alive. We come out of the reptilian consciousness of fight or flight into a wholeness and appreciation.
Yeah, beautiful. I think that's the, like, it's almost too good to be true reality, that not only can you, like, in a psychedelic or transpersonal experience, taste that and know that that's true, but then to integrate that back into your life is where the work is, right? And so to feel that just the harmony of your balanced being through your breath in your body is the whale consciousness, is the God consciousness, is the love consciousness that dismantles other frequencies in the space, and you're already in a state of peaceful, regulated presence with people. And so you're just getting to enjoy harmony that emanates from you, rather than it needing to be some trick or skill, you know, that you learn of authentic relating or nonviolent communication. You're not feeling violence in yourself, and you are authentically related. And so it just naturally arises. That to me is the, like, a core fruit or gift of coherence. Coherent medicine, the head-heart coherence is like, I'm thinking in alignment with how I feel, and how I feel is a electromagnetic frequency that extends far beyond these two bodies. So we're just in the field of
Yeah.
conscious coherence.
It brings me back to sharing in the early years in Mexico, where I shared a breath circle once a week, and there was an older Mexican woman that came to a circle of mostly expats or, white people. And there was a bit of dissonance in her because I was speaking and leading the workshop in English. Her first language was Spanish, and I noticed a friction in her as we opened. But as she opened within herself and she returned to this harmonic state, at the end of it, she was incredibly loving and wanted to connect with everyone there. There was no friction or resistance at all that was left in her being. We were family again. Right? And this is the quality that I've appreciated in elders that have been through their rites of passage enough to heal the wounds that weren't easy for them to feel, enough to know that we are one family. We're all indigenous to this earth, right? And it takes humility to come with a gift. It takes deep learning to come with an offering and say, I want to learn, right? Instead of, you have something that I want, without any reciprocity. And that's one of the reasons why we haven't been welcomed into indigenous circles, because we hadn't been taught. So it takes some time to learn protocols wherever you go, but this protocol is so simple that we're just coming home. We're just walking each other home.
Yeah. It's easy, and maybe like it's understandable to see the rift between those steeped or like intergenerational traditions of passing ritual and ceremony down, for it to feel so obvious and so innate how to honor what's occurring, and then for those that have been born into a severed state or feel separated from, or just depletion of any kind of ritual ceremonial consciousness. We are hungry for that if we haven't been nourished in that way. And so it's almost impossible to not end up overreaching or appropriating or doing that when we don't feel that indigenous native connection to the land in our body. If we don't feel safe here, if we don't feel that this is a trustworthy apparatus, the body, the heart, and its sensations that build coherence, that feed up to our mind to see in a different way, there's no way we're going to be able to fully participate, which is then where that criticism or shame or judgment,
100%.
or violence at its worst comes, because we're separate from something that's a birthright.
Right. And we don't feel included.
Right. And so then we're willing to kill for it, to take it in any way that we can, because deep down there's that rage or the anger that shows up because we've split from our true nature.
Yeah, teach me and I will learn. Hold me and I'll unlearn and remember.
Yeah. So much can be dismantled with that like safe touch connection, like you're saying, like that's quite a contrast, like to teach me in a scholastic way versus to hold me. It's like, do you mean physically? You're actually going to like lay hands on me? And that's actually a fundamental piece of this medicine. It's like, yeah, we're asking for consent to lay hands on you in a supportive and integral way, because that also goes to the root of what our developmental needs are.
And remembering that the human family is here because we all fundamentally need connection.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most beautiful qualities in our trainings, is seeing how human connection helps us fall in love with the human condition again, right? And that we're not just stuck in our own predicament. Everyone is in some way wrapped up in their predicament, and then we see that we can just laugh and celebrate again, right? And hold each other when we cry.
Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
Hey, thank you.
skiing.
Now hopefully our technology held on.